So I'll just give you a little bit of background about New Belongings here. The New Belongings has run. This is the third time the New Belongings program has run, and it's previous rounds were run by a different organisation, but led to some significant changes for care leavers. The personal advisors to 25, the council tax exemptions for care leavers, and in this round, which has been running from 2019 until the summer of 2020. Coram Voice were working with 8 authorities, as you can see, dotted right across the country, from North Tyneside right down to Dorset. Quite a mixture there of urban areas and some larger shire counties like Hertfordshire and Dorset itself, and inner city authorities, etc. So quite a diverse range of authorities. If we click on, please, Richard. And during the programme, we offered the support programme from Coram Voice was that Coram Voice were there as a critical friend, and we were looking to involve our care experience consultants. We worked with the local authorities to help them understand their needs of their care leavers through the use of the Your Life Beyond Care survey, and also how they were working with how they felt their self-assessed, how they self-assessed themselves through the Baker-Dixon. And initially, before the world of COVID, we thought that we would do 8 visits to local authorities, face-to-face visits. That changed, obviously, with COVID into far more online working, and there was a program of peer support available for all the authorities were involved with. So next slide, Richard, please. So just to click us through. So we started in the November to early part of 2020, setting up meetings with each of the authorities, looking to really involve the full range of managers. So it wasn't just the leaving care service, but it was also the chief execs, the directors, because we were absolutely clear for New Belongings to work, we needed to embed the principles of making change and listening to young people had to be embedded right the way through the department, right up to the highest levels, really. Just as COVID broke and the lockdown started, we asked local authorities to run the Your Life Beyond Care survey, which is a survey that part of our Bright Spots programme, and we'll give you the links to that later. But that really looks at what makes life good for young people. So that really gave the local authorities an understanding about what life was like for a care leaver in their authorities, and we could benchmark those findings against findings from other local authorities who've previously done the survey, and also local authority and also where it was available, young people who weren't care leavers. They also completed the self-assessment. We then fed back to them in the September to November of 2020 those findings, but also very importantly said that young people at that stage were identifying their priorities for change. What did young people feel based on what made life good for young people were the priorities for their local authorities to change. From September to March 21, there's quite a lengthy period of local authorities working with their young people and partners around how they developed their action plans. And then from March onwards, right the way through to now, the local authorities have been working on those plans. And in January and February of this year, local authorities redid the Your Life Beyond Care survey and the self-assessment. And we fed that back to them in between May and July of this year. And again, young people identified priorities for change, so they could think about what the next phase of their planning was going to be. And and what we're going to focus on today is the how young people's voices were heard through those surveys, through their action plans, and how they have co-developed plans with their local authorities. So if we move on to the next slide, Richard, please. The 2 main tools we used were the Your Life Beyond Care survey and the self-assessment. And as I said, that the in care, the Your Life Beyond Care really, I think, provided a real insight for local authorities to understand what made life good for their young people. I think gave some really powerful data, about how many young people felt safe in their lives where they lived, how many young people felt they were coping financially, and all these questions in that survey were developed with young people. So it's very much a young person led survey. So if we move on from there to the next slide, Richard. The core elements we found in the New Belongings programme were that co-production and working with your young people, listening to young people, were central to the programme. But of great importance was that commitment from senior leadership, the capacity of the local authority to deliver the programme, to focus on it, to provide the time and space for to implement the change, the engagement of their partner organisations, and that element of, as we are today, learning alongside each other. Next slide, please. And lots of, one of the key things was about that sign up and commitment for people to be championing their care leavers, and just a little snapshot there of various people from the different authorities, including DCSs, assistant directors, and young people, all making their commitment to be care leaver champions. And the next slide, please. And just to say, some words here from young people about what they felt New Belongings was about. It was about change. Can I just remind people to keep muted, please? Because just particularly as you just joining us, improvement, checking on how local authorities, asking why, empowering them. So very much about putting young people right at the centre of the journey for of New Belongings. So yeah, so I think just some ideas, a bit of a background about what New Belongings was about. And if we move to the next slide, Richard, please. So I think at this stage, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emma, who's going to pick us up from here, because what we thought we'd get you involved right at the start now in a Mentimeter. So over to you, Emma.
Yes, hi everybody. Like Ian said, we really wanted to begin this session with all of us reflecting on our own co-production journey. Before I kind of explain what we found with New Belongings and co-production, we want you to go on to Mentimeter. If you haven't used it before, you can just open another tab or use your phone to either scan the QR code or to go to www.menti.com and enter the code 673089997, and hopefully one of my lovely colleagues will put that code and email address into the chat function. And there are 3 questions. So thinking about your own service and your own journey to co-production with young people. 0 being kind of we haven't really started, to 10 being we've completely got it correct. Where do you feel that your service are on that journey? And then the second question is, what one thing that you're doing well, what are you proud of that you're doing with young people? And the third question is one thing that you would like to do better. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to get onto the link, and then I will share my screen so I can show you the results of the Menti.
Emma, we can't see anything at the moment.
No, my computer's just being a bit slow. Just love it when it's a bit slow, but we're getting there.
Just checking.
Okay. Thank you, though. Okay, so hopefully you should see that. We've had 32. Oh, it's climbing every second.
Yeah, we can see it, Emma.
Brilliant. So as you can see from this question, thinking about your service, where are you on the journey to co-production? As you can see, we've got quite a lot of spread from people that are saying they've not started yet to people that are saying that they're kind of, 2 or 3 or 4. But there are a great deal of people saying that they're kind of 6. So maybe that indicates that they're doing lots right, but they still feel that they have some way to go to get to that kind of 10, that it's completely sorted in your service. I can share all of these results with you later. If we just move on to the next question, which is what you one thing that you are proud of that you are doing well. So there's loads of stuff here. So some people are talking about kind of becoming familiar with co-production and what it is. We've got including young people in interview panels. We've got sharing young people's wishes and feelings through advocacy service, having more sustained care leaver engagement, connecting with young people and reducing isolation, employing young people as a part of the participation team, monthly catch-ups. So there's just a wealth of stuff that people are saying that they're doing really well. Lots of stuff around kind of a commitment to wanting to do co-production, engaging with young people, giving them opportunities, reaching out to young people, looking at different methods of communication, understanding how to connect with young people. So I think these are all amazing and positive things that everybody is doing well. And then the final question about things that you wish you would do better. Oh, so again, a real range of stuff. So I think a common theme is about involving more young people, maybe a kind of a diverse group of young people, having more regular interactions with senior managers and engaging with kind of partnership working, so partners, kind of having active involvement, being more joined up, and then continuing the momentum, and so making sure that it continues and that it's part of your process. I like that one. Encouraging more face-to-face groups and give feedback direct rather than through phone calls. And there's stuff about the feedback cycle as well. So again, some really interesting common themes that are coming out about making sure that we are continually trying to include young people and better all of the stuff that we do in co-production. So some really amazing stuff. Thank you for that. So as Ian said, my role at Coram Voice is that I'm the participation manager. I support the care experience consultants and have worked on the New Belongings project since 2021. So what I would like to do is to go through some of the learning that we had for New Belongings. Hopefully you can see that now. Perfect, brilliant. So as Ian alluded to, a real central plank of the New Belongings programme was to make sure that we amplified and embedded the voices of care leavers to create lasting improvements in local authority services for young people. We had a real kind of belief that young people are experts in their own experience. And that to create lasting improvements, we needed to involve them. So what was central to New Belongings was this co-production approach. So a move away from just listening to young people and then adults coming up with the solutions to what young people said, but to kind of link and directly work with care leavers so that they could find solutions together and develop plans around issues that were raised by care leavers. So the aim was to support local authorities, care leavers, forums to help identify key changes and implement these changes. So we kind of had an assumption going into New Belongings that local authorities would have a group of young people, a care leavers forum, and these would be the group that would drive the change in local authorities. However, when we started in 2019, it was kind of clear that there were lots of different arrangements for participation in the local authorities. So in the 8 local authorities, 4 of them had kind of designated participation teams or youth service teams that were doing participation work, and they would be central to New Belongings. Within this 4 local authorities, 2 of them had arrangements with voluntary organisations who also were doing the participation work in the local authority. However, in both of those models, the leaving care workers would be supporting that work. In the other 4 local authorities, the Leaving Care Service and its workers, primarily the PAs, would take on the responsibility for driving co-production. As Ian said at the beginning of our journey, we assumed that we would be able to spend a lot more face-to-face time in local authorities, and that our care experience consultants would be able to be with us in the local authorities with young people from those local authorities to really push co-production, to facilitate discussions, and to really embed co-production. However, as we all know, the start of 2020 was very different than anything we could have ever have prepared for, and the pandemic kind of altered lots of plans. The impact of COVID-19 straight away was kind of the suspension of face-to-face meetings and group meetings, so therefore it was very difficult for care leaver forums to kind of meet in person. And so local authorities were really had to kind of think about what they were doing and develop their practice. And it, you know, there were lots of incredible things that kind of came out of this time, that, you know, PAs were kind of directly talking to young people more. They were kind of going outside and having walks. And one of the main things that happened was a lot of online engagement. So through this process, I think we really kind of worked out that one size didn't fit all, and that when doing online sessions, it was really interesting who was attending. You know, young parents, young people that were out of county because of university, or just young people that were quite anxious and didn't like groups, for the first time were kind of engaging in online sessions. So I think that lots of authorities were really kind of working through that. Actually, there were kind of a lot of different ways in which young people could get involved in New Belongings, and that they could listen to young people's voices. However, it was really important that for anybody who works with young people, that we kind of had a place where we could kind of look at the tools to engage well and activities, and that anything that the authorities were doing, that involvement was meaningful, and that we were avoiding tokenism, decoration or manipulation. So participation workers, or the leads that were doing participation work, kind of came together online and really shared kind of techniques, things that they were trying, things that hadn't worked well. There was also some time where they looked at kind of online tools like Mentimeter that you just had a look at, or Jamboard. So it was a real place for kind of creativity, experimentation, and I think that this was a real strength of this time, even though it completely changed our plans. So throughout it all, I think we talk about co-production, or we talk about participation or engagement or listening, but we really have kind of been really looking at what do we actually mean by co-production. And we found this quote from Include, which says that co-production is an approach to decision making and service design rather than a specific method. The term co-production refers to a way of working where service providers and users work together to reach a collective outcome. The approach is value-driven, built on the principle that those who are affected by the service are best placed to help design it. And I think that we really kind of saw that in New Belongings. And when talking to local authorities, they said that one of the fundamental changes through New Belongings was that there was like a culture change and a new ethos within the leaving care service and in the local authority, where involving young people felt more integrated and part of core practice. I think everybody was in a different point in their journey, but everybody recognised the benefits to co-production and were committed and are still committed to work with care leavers to improve services. We saw lots of good examples of co-production. There was kind of standards and practice and different projects that really involved young people. However, for us, co-production really is an approach, and we think that if you engage with your care leavers in co-production and have that kind of real commitment to it, whatever the changes come out will be right for your young people because you've got the approach right. So how were young people involved? We kind of really wanted to try and kind of instill a kind of a diagram of how young people were involved right from the start of the New Belongings journey. As Ian said, setting the expectation right from the start was really important. So all local authorities had to sign up with an expression of interest, and they had to have senior manager kind of signing up to the programme. They needed somebody to coordinate co-production or participation. And so that was a real kind of fundamental starting block that every authority had. As Ian said also, the Your Life Beyond Care sets out what life was like for care leavers in each authority. We wanted to support authorities to explore what their young people felt needed to be done in response. What we were looking for is for young people to identify priorities for change. So once the survey had been completed, we created a short video for each of the local authorities, which explored things that were going well in the authority and some things that needed to change. And based on these findings, young people were asked to say what their priorities were. And this was a really important point of the project, and we really pushed local authorities to go back out to their young people who had completed the survey to discuss the findings and to really collect which priorities that they wanted. Some did this by showing the video online, others by having individual conversations with young people. And then once young people had kind of shared their priorities, all of the findings and the priorities were shared with senior managers, and an action plan was then created. Again, we really wanted to push local authorities to make sure that those action plans were jointly created with young people. So we wanted authorities to pick 4 or 5 themes from the action plans, but also to say, where are you going to involve young people? How can young people get involved? What are you going to, what are you going to ask young people? How can they be involved in co-producing things? And this was quite a process for local authorities to really push and think through how they could support their young people to be involved. And then lastly, kind of reviewing progress was really important. So as Ian said, earlier this year, we have been doing some reviewing of progress. One authority has even made a video of the progress that New Belongings has made in the local authority to show to young people to see kind of the difference made. So it's important that that kind of feedback loop is kind of yeah, sorted really. All of the actions in local authority plans were based on what was important to young people. We could really see that, and their priorities for change also came directly from young people. But the reality was that young people weren't always involved in implementing the changes. So reviewing all of the action plans, we found that only over a quarter of actions that the authorities identified in their plans appeared to involve young people. And when really exploring this, we think that these are some of the barriers that might be preventing kind of co-production. So some of the nature of the changes, there were kind of administration or internal processes that were part of the action plan, but maybe not a place where young people could get involved or co-produce. Also, practice varied between local authorities. So co-production does require resources and times, and this varied for local authorities, and the capacity varied. Also, young people's interest and availability. Authorities did look to engage young people in co-producing changes, but that young people's involvement kind of varied depending on specific projects or what they were interested in, or just things happened in young people's lives. So they went to university or got a job, or their priorities kind of changed. And then finally, kind of the understanding of the capacity of partner agencies. Co-production is a journey for us, but it also is a journey for partner agencies. So it's definitely one of those things that we need to kind of develop together to engage care leavers. So as I mentioned earlier, we had care experience consultants who were paid sessional workers to support New Belongings, and I felt it only fair to share our journey at Coram Voice. When the pandemic happened, our plans about involving our CECs in face-to-face delivery changed, and we kind of lost that kind of direct work between care experience consultants and young people in the local authorities. And we had a bit of a kind of a time where we really needed to think about how care experience consultants were going to be involved. Lots of meetings moved online, which were at times where possibly young people couldn't make it. And also for some of our CECs, they might have struggled with having kind of the right equipment, and also it might have not been their motivation to be online. So for us, we definitely have learned about kind of losing meetings in person, and that it's really important that we continued to engage with young people, check in with young people and make sure that they were still up to date with the project, and also kind of to build in re-recruitment training and team building along the project as well. So for us at Coram Voice, our co-production journey wasn't straightforward, and we definitely had lots of different learning from what happened over the last couple of years. So finally, based on everything that local authority leads told us, and amongst the New Belongings team, we really think that these are kind of three key enablers to delivery of co-production with young people. Having consistency of staff, so that might be senior leaders, but that also might be participation workers or PAs, is really important to supporting young people. Having committed service managers supported by senior managers, so ensuring that they are committed, that they're listening to young people, that they want to work alongside young people, that they want to have lots of meetings with young people, and also resources to do participation well. I think that we all want interaction with care leavers to be meaningful and purposeful, and this takes time, and also it takes resources, so it takes people, and we felt that, you know, that co-production can't be done on a shoestring, that there does need to be a commitment of resources, and where there is a commitment of resources and committed staff, and a consistency of staff, this is where we see the best co-production. So that's kind of a whirlwind stop of what we found during New Belongings and our co-production journey. We're going to kind of round things off with a short video with young people. We asked young people what the New Belongings programme meant to them, and this is what they said. Thank you.
I don't quite know what was going on now. Obviously, some people didn't get to see the video. My apologies for that. I don't quite understand what was going on there. What we have done, my colleague Linda has put the link to the video in the chat at 12:37 if you want to view it. But I'm really sorry for those of you who didn't get to see it, and for those of you who did, I hope you were able to enjoy that. And that was we asked for young people from the 8 authorities to talk about their experiences of New Belongings and how they felt involved. So, you know, I think those messages there about young people felt their voices were heard, I think is a really crucial message around co-production. And I think it's almost more important than the outcome of the work is that if you listen to your young people and involve them in the decision making, that in itself is a really empowering process for young people, and will actually lead you to get the right results for your local authority. I think there's often a danger when we come to events like this that we think, oh, that's a really good idea. We could just take that idea and use that in our authority. Well, actually, that idea and some of the ideas that were mentioned, like the Ring doorbell scheme in Stockport, which will give you details of how you can read about that later. That was right for Stockport, but possibly not right for you in your authority. So I think our message is, as young people were saying, we felt heard, we felt our voices were listened to, and we could see the changes coming as a result of our voices being heard is a really crucial one. And adapt these ideas to your own authority. And I think the other bit is that one of the things that was just to amplify something Emma was saying is that there isn't just one approach, I don't think, to gaining young people's views and developing plans with young people. It's, you know, there's a variety of ways in which we can we can hear young people through care leaver forums, through the young personal advisors having those conversations with young people, through ad hoc groups, you know, the sort of football groups, or the one authority used their UASC's football group that's set up for their unaccompanied asylum seekers. Other authorities were setting up sort of activities for young people, and then sort of, you know, using those to have conversations around what makes life good and what young people wanted to see changed in their services. So I think lots of ways of gathering young people's views. There isn't one solution for everybody. So what we are going to do now is we're going to move on to some presentations from the local authorities. What we asked them to do was to talk about what they had done in their authorities and to reflect on their work and what they had learnt, you know, and what they're going to do differently going forward. So we hope these presentations will inspire you to think about how you can listen to your young people, and you know, and think about what you can take from this and adapt to your local circumstances. So as I've said before, I'd be really grateful if you've got questions about this, if you pop them into the chat, then my colleague Claire will monitor that, and there will be time for questions at the end of the first presentation, which is and we're really grateful that that Tracey, who's the team manager in North Tyneside, has been able to take time out from her busy day to come and talk to us about the some of the work that's been done in North Tyneside. So I'll stop there, and if mute myself and hand over to Tracey.
Hello, hi. I think in terms of working with young people in North Tyneside, one of our main priorities in joining New Belongings was to broaden communication with a wider cohort of young people. So we have a very active children and care council in North Tyneside, and that actually links into a regional forum across the northeast where there's 12 local authorities involved. It's a very active forum, but what we've found is that it doesn't reach a wide cohort of young people. Sorry, just a minute. Sorry. Sorry, I'm sure that's deafening. So our children and care council is very active, but it tends to be a small number of young people over the age of 18 who engage with that. They tend to engage repeatedly, and the young people we find who really maybe face particular challenges in their lives, or who are more on the outskirts of the cohort, were the young people that we really wanted to engage. So actually lockdown did us a big favour. I didn't expect it to, but lockdown gave us that direct communication with young people, and we found a really big willingness for young people to participate in the Your Life Beyond Care survey. So we sent out information that this was happening. We sent out information about why it was happening. And then we took a very direct one-to-one approach with young people, where the personal advisor was the person asking the young people to fill in the survey. And we actually got nearly 50% of our young people did the survey. We didn't use incentives. We just asked them to do it for us. It was all anonymous, and we were really, really pleased with the amount of young people. We also know that afterwards, quite a few young people said to their PAs, "I've done that survey for you." So we know that we reached young people that we wouldn't have reached had we gone through, we just maintained our focus on the Children in Care Council. Could I have the next slide, please? So we did the Your Life Beyond Care survey, and we got nearly 50%, which is, I don't know about your local authorities, but massive for us. Our young people are all over the age of 18. And a lot of our young people live independently, so they've got a lot going on. So I think we found that during lockdown, because we were doing a lot of electronic communication, a lot of phone calls, video calls, we found that the relationships with the PAs became really significant to young people, that point of contact. We'd also had the luxury, if you could call it that, of the build up to lockdown, where we were quite a bit behind southern counties, in that we knew what was coming. So we had time to build up some sort of communication routines with young people. So we completed the survey, and that highlighted several bright spots for us, where that shows where practice was going well, but it also highlighted some areas that young people identified as less bright, where we thought we needed to concentrate. So what we did with that, rather than us making assumptions based on young people's feedback just on the survey, because New Belongings produced a report for us on the outcomes of that survey. That gave us a lot of information about what young people said directly, but also the trends amongst the cohort of what young people were focused on. I think it would be very easy as a manager and as senior managers, we all work in this because we want to fix, don't we? We all want to mend things, we all want to improve things. So it would be very easy then to say, oh, young people have said this is important, right, we'll do that. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to work very clearly with the young people who'd participated, and to keep involving other people from the cohort. So we agreed that the PAs would individually talk to their young people. And that's time consuming. So I would, give the caveat that this was lockdown as well. So PAs were having a lot of telephone conversations. At the time, we were in touch with our young people every 2 weeks throughout lockdown. So there was a lot of communication going on. But that gave us the opportunity to talk to young people about, what did they think about those findings? Was that what they thought? Was it true? There was a big focus on mental health and well-being. Was that important to them? What did they think should be our priorities from that report? We sent them the summary of the report. We sent them a newsletter explaining what we were doing and asking them, which of these identified areas do you think we should focus on? We did that so it really helped clarify what we were doing and why, and that gave us our 4 areas. We were able to combine that with any group sessions we did online, with the individual feedback and with the survey, to produce our action plan, which came up with those 4 areas. On that, I would just say that one of the role of the PA in discussion with Coram Voice, we decided to keep that, although it was a very bright spot for us. It was a really good area of practice. We decided to keep a good area of practice in there so that it became evident to senior managers that young people valued that, because I think quite often when a service is going well, there's a temptation to give it more or to, you know, put more pressure on. So we really wanted to show that this is what young people value, therefore we need to keep it. So that was the reason that was within the action plan. When we did the Your Life Beyond Care survey for the second time to follow up, we didn't target as many young people as we did in the first round. We were out of lockdown, young people's priorities were different, the way of working had largely got back to normal. So what we did then was each PA talked to 3 or 4 of their young people about what came out in the second round. We were also then able to do more group work, and we were able to check with the young people, did they want to, you know, how did they think we'd progressed with the priorities? Did they want to keep those priorities? Were there new priorities? So how would the action plan develop? Can I have the next slide, please? So we found that the programme was really successful in that we were able to reach that broad cohort of young people, and that for us gave a very real understanding of our young people's views. So we did involve the young people who were in the Children in Care Council in North Tyneside, but we didn't use the participation team, and we didn't use that cohort of young people. It was the PAs who did the work, and it was across all of our young people. So all information was disseminated to all young people, and the options to attend meetings, to come to workshops with senior managers, all of that was across the board to any young people. That did result in a lot of work, I will say. You know, it's a lot of legwork for PAs to be going back to young people, but it did allow us to clarify it and have that in-depth discussion. You know, for example, one of the priorities for our young people was their physical appearance. It came out that a large number of those who responded weren't happy with their physical appearance. But what does that mean? I mean, probably if we asked everyone on this call, people would come up with a different thing about their appearance. There's probably, you know, very few of us who would say, yes, I'm delighted. You know, so we didn't know if that was about having a clothing allowance. We didn't know about if it was health and exercise or diet or self-confidence. So it's quite a complex area to unpick. So we really wanted to get into it with our young people about what did that mean for them. So that gave us an individualized look at things, but we then had to try and put that into an action plan. So that gave us a lot of direction of what we wanted to focus on. But I think, you know, I have to accept also that it was a lot of work, and I think what we learned was that it would be really good to have really clear priorities at the start of doing that, because I don't know about your authorities, but certainly in North Tyneside, if you keep going back to young people about the same thing and the same thing, there's a point at which, you know, they want to know what's happening. They don't want to keep discussing it. So it was really important to be giving feedback about what was happening as well, to say, you know, I want more information on this, but that's because we're doing this. We found that whether that was the approach or whether it's the nature of our young people, every time we engaged with young people, either through surveys or accessing information or groups, the cohort changed. There was very few young people who wanted to remain consistent right throughout the process. They would come and go, and we accepted that as part of how our cohort worked. You know, but it also allowed us to identify some young people who were really passionate about giving their views, and they were young people that might not normally have come forward. So we had a young male from support accommodation, a young mum, who were really, really good at giving their views at events. And then we were able to talk to them afterwards about, would you keep involved? Will you do this for us? So we did learn that I've put their professional tendency to find solutions, that you give a senior manager or a director feedback from young people and they say, all right, we'll do this. And that then takes it away from the young people, because we then want to know what the young people think would be the solution rather than what the professionals think. So it was a lot of ongoing involvement to make sure there was clarity, and I think that was the benefit of that approach, really. As I said, a risk of repetition impacting on engagement. Young people do need to see the outcomes, that, you know, going back to young people and saying we are doing this was important to keep that momentum going. And, you know, I think certainly with the second survey, because of the change, we had particular changes in our authority. We had some structures that didn't really maintain the focus on the programme. I think Ian and Emma already mentioned about the importance of having your seniors supporting this and pushing it forward. And I think that is crucial. As a team manager, the time and the focus to maintain this, it really needs a service manager, at least, if not a senior manager, who can drive this forward. And that's not to say a team manager can't do, you know, we did all of this co-production within our team, but what we couldn't do was then really get other service areas involved. So, for example, with health and wellbeing, we needed someone who would push to make sure that that worked, and we got the resources that we needed for young people. So I think that's it for me.
Tracey, thank you very much for that. That's really helpful. And I think that point you just made at the end about you did that within your team and within your own services. And there were difficulties then about getting partners involved, but actually for your young people, there was that element that their voices were being listened to. Although there were difficulties in actioning it, it did make it possible to do some of that within your service, which I think is really crucial. It's as much about listening to young people and hearing their views is almost as crucial here, really. So thank you very much for that. I'll just turn to Claire. Claire was my colleague Claire Baker. Claire, was there anything you wanted to pick up from the chat or from the chat that you may want to just pose back as questions or thoughts to Tracey?
Yeah, sure. I just want to pick out one of the comments, and then there's a question as well. So sorry, it's further up the thread, but somebody just emphasising uniqueness, individuality and preference, choice, giving people several options to participate, so they can share their ideas and experience. So that really resonating, and I really loved how you phrased that, so thank you. Somebody asking an easy question, probably Tracey, what's your role in the local authority? And then I've got a different one for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm the team manager for the Leave and Care team, which is an 18+ service in North Tyneside.
Fabulous, thanks, Tracey. And just to emphasise, we will share the recording of this as well as all the resources, and we've got some more resources coming out at the end of the month. But the question, Tracey, Linda was asking about working in this way. Did you find there was any sort of solutions or ideas that your young people were coming up with that kind of challenged maybe a more traditional view of what the best solution would have been? Because it sort of resonates with that idea of, you know, getting us all together in the room. We might just come up with different angles and different things. Anything spring to mind?
Yeah, initially, I think one of the first things that sprung to mind was the actual communication. I think in one of the groups that the PAs held, the young people talked about the way that we communicate with them as being archaic. I think Ali, who's on the call somewhere, the young people said, you know, we were basically like dinosaurs. We insist on having reviews in a meeting. We don't work on, you know, social media so well. We don't use a lot of technology. We insist on very formal, traditional methods of communication. So, and I think through lockdown that made us really aware and able to speak to senior managers about, you know, our young people want WhatsApp calls with us. They want, you know, to be able to chat with us through Messenger. They want, you know, partly some of this stuff is free, but also it is what is comfortable for young people. So it was interesting feedback, but it was also, you know, quite useful to us, because actually once you get used to communicating like that, it's really, really helpful to have that variety of ways to communicate with young people on an ongoing basis. So that gave us food for thought initially.
Right, and if I just had time to pull Darren's question, thanks Darren, about and we saw this across New Belongings. A number of local authorities kept, or a lot of the work was done sort of within the leaving care team, and Darren was wondering, was there a particular reason why your participation colleagues were less involved in New Belongings?
I probably said that they weren't involved, and they were, to the extent that we kept in communication about what was happening and we gave feedback. We did talk about having the participation team be the people who contacted young people, but what we decided was that we would only do that if the young person didn't want to speak to their PA or needed support to do the survey. So within the survey, it's all electronic and anonymous, but we were conscious that if a young person needed help either to read it or to manage the electronic version, they might need somebody to help, and the PA therefore might not be the best person because there are questions about the PA. So we had the option that the young person could be supported through the participation team. It was never taken up, or through or our admin could provide a paper copy of the survey and they would collect it and input it into the survey. So, but in general, the reason that we didn't have the participation team conduct the survey was simply because the PAs have the best relationships with young people. And as lockdown happened, also our participation team were extremely busy, involved in organising, you know, free school meals, different, you know, support for, not free school meals, but you know what I mean, the additional support for families and things in the area. So that was why.
Great.
Tracey, thank you very much for that. Really interesting. I think actually sort of seeing it in action, or hearing it in action, is really important, and makes it, you know, makes it all far more understandable. Thank you, Claire, as well. And I think one of the things I'd say, people have posed some questions around the interest in the Your Life Beyond Care survey. We will talk more about that in the next session, but one of the things that's really comes across really powerfully in that survey is just how important leaving care workers are to their young people. You know, they are absolutely one of the key essential sources of emotional support, and far more so than, you know, a ride up there with friends, and usually second only to friends as a source of emotional support. And I think we wanted to, and I think that's why Tracey in North Tyneside built on that importance in her action plans to, you know, to build on a real positive. So thank you very much for that, Tracey. We're going to now turn to our colleagues in Dorset. If we could just move on a slide, Richard, thank you very much. And I'd really like to welcome Susan Holden, who's the team manager for the Leaving Care Service, and her manager, Matt Chislett, who's the, if I give him the full title, Service Manager for Care Leavers, Children in Care and Corporate Parenting. So they're going to talk about their task force leaders, which I think takes the work on to the next stage, or the next stage of the process. So over to you two. Thank you.
So, hello from Dorset. If you could move on to the next slide, please. This is a summary slide which kind of gives you a bit of the overview of what we hope for and what we intended, and then I'm going to go on a bit to drill down into the detail of it. So really the two things that we'd picked up from the previous New Belongings programme was about the importance of the direct voice of the young person, but also, and some of my comments are going to pick up on what Tracey said, it was also, and I think it's a commonly held view in leaving care services that a lot of the issues, challenges, areas for development that care leavers identify, they're not within the gift of the leaving care service to solve. It requires other parts of the council, it requires the involvement of partners. So at the point we'd got our survey results back and we'd done our self-assessment, again, it was becoming very clear that we needed to reach outside of children's services or outside of the council at the earliest point. So when we were thinking about how we wanted to go forward, we wanted to put young people together with managers from relevant partners. So that's where we came up with the idea of task forces. Similar to Tracey, we wanted to do something slightly different. We were aiming for a broader, maybe attracting a different group of people to come and work with us. So we wanted to create a role, create a title that would be very focused on the New Belongings work. So we came up with task force leaders, and that was the sort of the main plan for how we were going to take the ideas that we'd got from our groundwork on the New Belongings programme. So if we can have our next slide, please. So this was the recruitment we did, and again, similar to Tracey, our survey had returned that our young people really rated, relied on, respected their person advisors. So we knew we needed the person advisors to go and talk to their young people about these opportunities to increase their involvement. And also, we knew from the survey discussions that we had that certain young people had certain concerns in certain areas, and we wanted to kind of really harness that and find young people who wanted to come on the journey with us. We were very keen to link it to the survey, to sort of say, this is what you did in the survey that has told us this, that we are picking up as an issue that we want to work forward on. And again, I think that's the key theme, to always go back when you've had a message from young people, to continually reinforce back to the young people, this is what you've told us, we've heard you, and we want to try to make things better for you. That was kind of the focus in our recruitment. We decided to have it sort of time bound rather than ongoing, because we thought that might be a more manageable concept for our young people to manage. So we had phase 1, which is where we wanted to bring senior leaders and young people in the room together, really as a listening exercise to reflect on what the survey had told us, to hear some real life experiences, and then to have some initial feedback. But we also wanted a phase 2, which was sort of 3-4 months down the line, and invite those partners back, which would have given them an opportunity to go back into their own services, to have some conversations, and to be able to come back with a more kind of considered view. So, and can I just say, I'm delighted to see that Anne Haig is on the call, who worked very closely with me through phase 1 and phase 2. Hi, Anne. And we've kind of diverted a little bit since that time, so it's really lovely to have you here, and to Anne was a leading light through this time. One of the things that has really stuck with me on our first meeting, and you can see there the plans we had for sort of phase 1. Phase 1 was an introduction, and we'd put our heads together. We'd done a lot of the usual sort of icebreakers, getting to know each other, sharing a little bit of ourselves. That's how our first session was planned to start. But within about half an hour of that, we had 12 people come to our first meeting, and within half an hour of that, somebody stopped us and said, what are we doing playing games? We've given you some serious messages here. You've told us you want to work with us on improving our leaving care experiences. Who cares what's my favourite biscuit? So that sort of brought us up sharp a little bit in a very positive way, that we thought, we have got a group of people who are very engaged and serious and sort of keen to get going. So, you know, we used that session really to talk about expectations, to talk about how we thought things might go, but really how they wanted to do it. And that's what they said. We don't want any icebreakers. You know, let's get down to business. And boy, did they. So that's going to stay with me throughout all of this time. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so we talked about consistency of staff and having the same people involved. So when we first took on New Belongings and we were working up to our survey and the self-assessment, all of our participation work was delivered externally. And just at the point where we were doing this, setting up the task force leaders, the decision was taken not to renew that contract and to bring it in-house. So one of the challenges for the staff involved, where there was all this HR business, you know, there was all the running down of one service, you know, beginning to get thinking and planning about how it was going to work in the new service. And Anne had been with our commission service and fortunately was able to come across. And Anne, myself, and one of the PAs who've been nominated from the team, Lucy, were, you know, we tried to keep a real clear focus on just the program that we'd got in place and not to sort of get distracted by the machinery that was going on around that kind of process, which, you know, I think we managed it, but there was definitely sort of noise around that could have distracted us from what we wanted to do. That was something we had to keep quite tight about. What came quite quickly from, sorry, if you can just go back a bit. Yeah, in terms of managing expectations, what also became clear from the young people that came is that they had a very broad range of expectations. You know, it is right to say that a lot of people shared some very difficult experiences that they'd had, which did have a big impact not only on the staff that were attending those meetings, but also had an impact. I think for some of those young people, it was the first time that they'd talked to other care experienced people, and it did land heavily with them when they were talking about the experiences that they'd had that they wanted to see in it. So, you know, it was a really good and positive thing because it really focused us and it was very powerful. One of the things that came up from that is that some of our young people that attended, they wanted things sort of fixed the next day, the next week. You know, the time scale that they had for the issues that they wanted to bring were not ones that we could meet. And there was quite a lot of conversations around that in terms of the length of the time process. And I picked up on one of Emma's slides of one of the young people there was saying that one of the things that he'd taken from New Belongings was that he'd learned how much of a machinery there is, how many different people are involved, what the processes are to actually bring about any change to a service. And some of the young people found that a huge frustration, which was, you know, that's something that we had to sort of take on board. And that sort of links with maintaining motivation. But again, I'd echo what Tracey said, that the machinery of the PAs that supported those young people, of Anne and Lucy, who had some dedicated time to this, in terms of debriefing after every meeting, prepping for the next meeting, fielding calls in between times, and also the other thing we tried to do between the meetings, if there were young people who had the time, who had the interest and wanted to, we were also looking to see if we could feed them into other bits of work that were going on in the council and our partners around this time. So the setting up of that, the supporting of that, the facilitating of that, you know, the commitment that is needed and the time that is needed from all parties sort of surrounding that young person can't be underestimated. And you can never have enough of it. I think that's what we would sort of say. We put a lot of time into it, but there was always more that we could have done. We had high attendance in phase one, and we had a reduced attendance of young people in phase two. And my sense of that is, you know, that we did have young people who had things to say. They had things to say. They did say them, and they said them very powerfully. And for some people, that was enough. They decided at that point, right, you've asked me, I've told you, over to you. But there was some others that were sort of saying, you've asked me, I've told you, and I want to make sure you get it right, or I want to stick with it and see where it goes. So that was something that we were sort of through the process. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so this is, I just wanted to capture again sort of the voice of our young people, of what they'd said about how they found the process. And again, it's just really echoing what other people have said, that they felt heard. And the feedback at the end of phase 1, we wrote a letter out to all people, all of our care leavers. And again, that's the other messages that I think are important, is that there was evidence of young people working with staff. So it wasn't that we'd heard what young people had said and then we went off and did our own thing. It landed with people that there was some joint work. We'd done a phase 1. We'd got the young people who co-wrote that letter with us to talk about what was going to happen in phase 2. So we really wanted to convey it was joint work, it was co-production, and it was ongoing, and there was always going to be further opportunities coming up for people. And that's the feedback that we've had. So I think we were happy that we kind of got those messages out. Okay, next slide, please. I just wanted to show this picture because at the end of phase 2, we've got some quite clear ideas about which ways we wanted to go, and we knew which ones were going to be simpler to solve and which ones weren't. So we had the opportunity at the end of phase 2, and we had this meeting. So that's our chief executive is there, our executive director is there, 2 corporate directors are there. We've got 3 of our young people, and there you are, Anne, there you are. And we had our lead member councillor Somper, and the young people that we had did the presentation of the summary of all that they felt had been achieved and where we needed further support with, and this just captures the moment. So this evening was a very powerful evening for some of the outcomes that we've had. And if we can move on to the next slide, you can sort of see we've had many outcomes from there, but we've just sort of focused on the ones that we think were particularly important. So we got the authorization from our senior managers, and I think we were the first local authority to sign up for the Ask Jan membership, which is multifunctional. It's got financial advice, it's got counselling, it's got access to leisure facilities, the whole range of services that are offered through that way, that we were able to very quickly address some of people's concerns through signing up for the Ask Jan membership. Yes, from the meeting that we had with the head of our educational psychology service and our lead from the clinical commissioning group came along to the session that we had on emotional well-being, and almost as a direct, very quick response from that, I think we had 1.5 days time of a specialist nurse in our service, which didn't really meet the need. So that was increased almost straight away to like 3 days a week, which has had a huge and immediate increase in the accessibility of that sort of specialist service for some of our young people. Putting the next 2 together, a direct response really from that meeting that we had on the slide before is that there was a commitment within Dorset Council to set up the Care Leavers Delivery Group. So that was initially led by our executive director, who has set up bi-monthly meetings with a number of the other directors from the service, crucially housing, but also with the directors and other key partners. And to know that we've got that focus every 2 months for some significant leaders inside and outside of the council to continue to go back to that action plan and just focus on the care leaver journey has been, has been quite a sort of fundamental shift, I would say, in sort of Dorset Council. And then more recently, and this goes back to the point, I think, of you know, when I think of those young people who joined us for that first meeting, who were in a hurry to get things improved, we're almost 2 years on from that now. You know, it's over 18 months since that first meeting that we had with those kind of powerful messages. But what our first survey, again, it sort of said that the young people saw the PA, they respected them, they wanted more time with them. They could see that if they had more time, it would have an enormous benefit across a whole range of other kind of issues. And that's been heard. And just in the last sort of two months, really, isn't it? 2 or 3 months, Dorset has made this commitment to increasing our team by 5 PAs and 2 senior PAs. And I just think with that extra resource into our team, it's going to have a significant impact on it across a range of issues that those young people have been telling us about over the 2 years of this programme. Yeah, so how I think I wanted to finish, I think of the next slide. Yes, the next slide, I just wanted to finish with the voice of one of our young people. And again, we were talking about leaving care services can't solve everything. You know, we need the community around our young people to be able to contribute to the you know, to improve the outcomes of our care leavers. So one of our young people, he almost went off into a room with his phone, and he created this, which he then came back and showed us. And I just wanted to share it with you. Really, it's a film that we've used very broadly, very widely, and will continue to do so within the council with our partners, just to give a kind of a flavour of the kind of the challenges that people have and the kind of the opportunities that could be afforded to them. So if you could see this, please.
And thank you very much for that presentation. And I think the Casey at the end talking about his experiences is really powerful. I think I love the idea of being a care leaver is not quintessentially who I am. It's just a wonderful phrase, really. So what I'm just conscious of time. So Claire, do you want to just come in and say, are there any particular points you wanted to, or colleagues wanted to pick up from that presentation?
Great. So I'm just going to read a really, it's subtle, but a really subtle difference, but really important and well-made point from Kay about the expectations and embedding co-production. So helping young people understand right from the start that you're working with them on solutions, and that's the goal, that it's not about the service then going away and fixing it for them, but it's rather sort of moving from a you said we did to trying to be much more you said and together we have or we will. So thanks for that, Kay. That's in the chat if people want to read that. And then just as a question about remuneration from Lara, I think it was. So do you, with the task force leaders, is it voluntary or do you pay them? If you had a quickish answer on that, thanks.
I'll try and make it quick. It was a hot potato, I can tell you that. So what we decided for phase 1 and phase 2 was that that they had to come to 3 of the 6 sessions that were organised, and we would pay them £45 if they did that. That was one of the sort of hiccups, if you like, between moving from our commission service to our in-house service. There was all sorts of discussions about what kind of remuneration was. So that was a bit of a case in point. And in fact, that was one of the discussions we had with the young people as well. So the discussions that we had about how they wanted to be remunerated then fed into the development of our new youth voice service, which came with a much more sort of prescribed set of rewards for different levels of engagement.
Thank you, Susan.
So we're just moving now to the last 5 minutes of our time together. So Richard, if you can just click onto the next slide. So there are some tools that you might want to take away and use around user voice and influence, so that they will be available to you. And the next slide, Richard, please. So just to say that this is the first of 3 webinars we're running. So we've got one next week on New Belongings, which is about the key messages from the programme. So you will hear more there about the some of the findings from the Your Life Beyond Care survey. And the final one on the one on the 30th is around responding to emotional health and well-being needs of care leavers. And I think some really powerful and interesting stuff in that. There's an evaluation report, and there's the links there to that will go out. They're already been in the chat around the links to the Your Life Beyond Care survey, and also to the resource hub. The resource hub is where we keep a lot of the examples of the work that local authorities have done. So if you click onto the link, it will take you to this, and then click onto the next slide, Richard. There are some short little examples, so you can read about the Future First champions, where usually Wandsworth, where they actually paid their young people to take on a role, and actually supported them and prepared them for regular meetings with the assistant director, where their voices were heard through a variety of forums. So there's a number of case examples that you can use that you may want to read about. Menu of opportunities, and we'll just skip through them, Richard, before we come to the final slide, please. Stockport's idea about actually you've got to go back to young people and tell them what you've done. You know, the you said we are doing together. You've got to report that back to the wider group of care leavers. Otherwise, why would people have faith that you are listening, you are actioning what they're what they said is important to them? But what we wanted to finish on was a short video from a collection of short videos that we've put together from Hertfordshire, which is where they're talking about their journey around co-production. So if you click onto the next slide, Richard, and we'll just let this play through. It's about 2 minutes long. So I hope you enjoyed that. I think the key message for me in that is that, you know, that actually working with young people does open doors and does kick open doors in a way that doesn't normally happen. I think secondly that, you know, co-production is a gold standard service that we should all aspire to, but actually, you know, as we've tried, I think, hope to share today, that if you base your actions and with young people on what they say is important to them and their priorities, you're going to get it right in your authority. So I think hopefully you'll take away some ideas from today and be able to use them in your work in the future, in listening to young people. So thank you all very much. We will send out an email to you all with a link to the next two Eventbrite the Eventbrites for the next two meetings, and I hope you're able to join us. And as I said earlier, all the resources that we've used today we will put on our website, and you'll be able to access them, and we'll let you know when they're up there. So thank you all very much. Particularly thanks to Tracey, Susan and Matt from the from North Tyneside and Dorset for their presentations, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. I hope you've had a really enjoyable and helpful session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
I
just
think it's
removed.
just us now.
Yeah, I just removed someone from the meeting.
Yeah, me too. I was like, sick.
Good job.
Yeah, well done,
Well done, Emma.
everyone.
And
Yeah, that's
Turn the
great.
recording off now, Ian.
I enjoyed attending that. Well done.